Hey, it's Rebecca, and you are listening to Resilient by Design. Today, I interview Margot Austin. I was about to say AustinSmyth. No, Margot Austin of AustinSmyth Communications. She is one of two people who run this incredible firm that creates and executes customized marketing plans to build buzz for interior designers so that they can focus on landing their dream clients and servicing their clientele. Margot is, let me just say, she is a bit of a big deal. Margot's a big deal. She has been, oh my God, editors of all the top design lifestyle magazines here in Canada. I've always admired her style. One thing we didn't talk about in the podcast, gosh darn it, is our mutual love of tartan and plaid. We'll have her back for that one. But today's a really great, deep conversation about getting publicity, getting published. What does it mean to get published in print? You know, what are the things that you as a designer can focus on to grow your reach and your brand? We talk about all the different platforms where she really recommends designers spend their time focusing on at the beginning and the value in leveraging multiple touch points to attract that ideal client. She is super savvy, has tons of wisdom to share. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. So enjoy this talk with Margot Austin.
All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business.
Are you as tired as I am working in a bubble? I mean, shoot. It's time to maybe socially distance with other people. That is why I love coming to the Collective Workspace. If you are someone who is looking for a little bit of stimulation, a lot of beauty, the Collective Workspace is a really great place to go. It is a co-working space for designers, architects, and builders in Toronto, and they're opening a second location this spring. They have flex workspace and offices starting at $120 a month. There's boardrooms, a podcast booth, which is where I am right now, concierge, storage, and a trade-only design library. You can find out more, or if you want to book a tour, go to thecollectiveto.com. Ooh, I am here with Margot, having a fangirl moment. Not gonna lie. I'm really excited. Okay, let's just dive right in. Margot, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me on the podcast. My name is Margot Austin, and I'm a Toronto-based creative and multi-hyphenate, I think I would say. So I do many things from styling to PR and marketing communications, website creation for designers, social media coaching, writing stuff.
You do it all in one package.
I've just got to, honestly, it all comes down to storytelling and words and pictures, which is kind of my lifeblood, right? So it's all about design and putting together beautiful words and pictures. So.
And you know what you're talking about because you have a past working in magazines. Do you want to mention that maybe?
I do, yeah. Like I call it my first chapter in my career, and it was a long one. So I spent over 20 years actually working in magazine journalism. And I actually started out at TV Guide, of all places, like when it was a print magazine, when there were enough channels to fit in a print magazine. It was my first job. And I always joke that, sure, I went to university and stuff, but the reason I got my first job was my extensive knowledge of TV and the fact that I watched tons of TV as a kid. I was super interested in all things kind of pop culture and lifestyle at that time. And I was really happy to be working in magazines. And I went on to work at Canadian Living and Images magazine, which was a fashion and beauty magazine that Shoppers Drug Mart used to put out. And that was actually my first love, was fashion journalism. And I really wanted to, that was like the kind of the ultimate goal. And then it was actually when I was at Images that I switched from being super obsessed with fashion and beauty and all things to being more interested in the home and how design translates to the home. And I think that was kind of coincided with like where I was at in my life as well. Cause I met my husband around that time, and he was an antique dealer. And so he was very, interested in home and decorating. And then we bought our first house. And so, yeah, I kind of naturally, moved over. And so then that was when I worked at a Home Depot magazine for a brief time, and then into Style at Home, and then House and Home. So that was like the magazine journalism part.
Yeah. And I'm just going to add in there for all of our American listeners, if you're not familiar, I mean, House and Home is in the US, I think.
Yes, it absolutely is. Yeah.
But it is like Style at Home, and then also, but really House and Home. We love all of our publications up here, but it is kind of like the creme de la creme of Canadian interior design publications, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are the top two for sure. And yeah, definitely.
And you were editor.
I was a senior design editor at Style at Home, and then at House and Home, I think my title was design editor, but then while I was there, I was the editor of the special interest magazines. So there was the main editor-in-chief while I was there, who was Suzanne Dema. And so then I was handling like the special issues, which would come out, a couple times a year, and it would be either makeovers or kitchen and baths or those kind of special focus issues. And so I was the editor of those, as well as being on the main staff as well, producing photo shoots, going to homes, doing stuff in studio, all that jazz.
Oh my God, such a glamorous life. It sounds so fabulous.
Oh my gosh, I just have come off a 2-day studio shoot, and it's anything but glamour. Like my knees are bruised from being on my hands and knees on concrete, laying down like fake flooring in the studio, and my hands are just ripped to shreds from like all the DIY projects I did leading up to it. So it doesn't feel very glamorous, but it is exciting. I'll totally give you that. Absolutely.
You did not like The Devil Wears Prada?
It's a lot of the schlep, right? I mean, you got to have your heavy lifting, wits about you. You've got to watch your back. You've got to, it's a lot of very physically demanding work. And then when you're done the physically demanding work, you have to really focus on the creative. And that switch is like, you just kind of got to keep on your toes. But that's the dopamine hit for me. That's what keeps me coming back. Right.
I imagine it's also extremely fast paced. Like, I don't know how magazines churn out an issue every single month. Like, I can't.
Yeah. It's funny because I have worked at quarterly magazines and weekly, quarterly, and monthly magazines. And so it's really interesting. There's a total difference in the pace, but they all have like a set routine where certain things are done at certain times. And that's what, you just work to that. And sort of, that's just the nature of the business. I mean, I think like it's now that I'm freelance doing styling and doing other things, those gigs are much more quick turnaround, because usually you get a call like, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks before, and you got to kind of turn around like 4 fully realized room sets, and get it all there, and logistics and all that jazz. The magazine stuff is a little bit more long-term because there's quite a bit of planning. There's so much planning goes into making a great magazine issue. And that's a thing that I think is one of those behind the scenes things that maybe some people don't realize, is that, the thought process that goes behind like those, 4 or 5 houses that are in the main section. There's quite a bit of like planning and work that goes into making sure that mix is right. And so many people have a hand in that, it's really, it's quite a process.
Yeah, it's why, like, designers, I think the very first time that I was published actually was Style at Home. I don't know, you weren't there then. And we got the cover. I was like, oh, it was blown away. It was so exciting. My first time was this blue kitchen I did. Blue kitchens, so over it. But it was so interesting because I knew I was going to be in the issue months prior.
Yeah.
And that was my first experience. And I remember thinking like, oh, I have to wait. Like, I am not a patient person. Waiting, especially when it's your first feature and you're like so excited and you're waiting. And it just made me think about how much in advance they have to plan to, get it all laid out and go, I don't know, all the things that need to happen before it goes to print and then it lands on your doorstep, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you're in Canada, when you're talking about seasonal shooting, that has to happen a year in advance, because if you need snow, you can only get snow a year before, because otherwise it's August, right? Like, so the ultimate deadline for an issue is pretty much about 6 to 4 months ahead of when it's on newsstands. So yeah, when you're talking about those winter issues, their final deadlines are July, August. So clearly you can't be getting like houses with views out to snow at that time. So you have to get those all in the bank and shot the year before. Mm-hmm. And same likewise for cottages and any fine weather stuff, any exterior stuff, that all has to be at least a year in advance. Yeah. And then of course there's some of the like sort of the scramble to do some of the other types of stories that don't require views or real snow that happen, in a studio, but you're still out there on the market running around trying to find fresh boxwood and like any kind of floral that's going to look like holiday at all. Sorry, in August.
So stressful. I couldn't do that.
Oh, listen, you manage a whole design firm. I guess we
can do whatever we put our minds up to.
Yeah,
right?
I think we totally can. And that's where we're at right now. It's just like, absolutely. And again, it's all sort of part of the, the rush of it all, I guess I would say. So but that's sorry to interrupt. That's one of the things like I really would like designers to know more about, is the fact that, we talk about, is there value getting published versus like, being in a magazine or being on your Instagram and all that kind of stuff. And I've been really digging in lately on some of the best kind of marketing practices. And I'm really fascinated by like the story brand approach, because I really feel like if people haven't, they can Google that up and find out some more about it. But to me, this whole concept of telling the story of your client through your work is really where it's at. And it's kind of interesting because that's really why getting editorial in a magazine is so amazing for a design business, because your work is in the hands of people who are professional storytellers, like someone who's doing graphic design and has been doing it their whole life, copy editors who are like so sharply on that copy, like you wouldn't believe, writers who have a turn of phrase that, does its best for your artistry and to tell your client's story. And then editors who are putting that together, that mix. And like, I'm sorry, but you don't have that with your Instagram. You can cultivate it, and you should use that as an example of how to cultivate an amazing Instagram storytelling experience. But it takes quite a bit of work, and it's not comparable immediately. You have to really understand the magic of a great story in order to sort of really maximize that potential.
You know what, Margot, that's so interesting. I love that you're talking about that, because you're right. No one really talks about that much. And I do. I love Donald Miller, who wrote the book Story Brand. I listened to his podcast. I don't remember. He just rebranded the podcast. But anyhow, that idea. And you're right, with Instagram, it is hard. It's funny. It's not, it's a collection of beautiful images. And yes, it tells a story about your brand, but it's not necessarily telling the story. And you can do one of those posts where you're swiping and looking at the befores and the afters, but there's something about the copy, the words, the images, and how they go together to tell that story. And I'll just say, like, my experience, because I used to work with a publicist here in Toronto, and I'm not anymore, but I worked with a publicist, and it would make me crazy. I was like, I get it. Okay, the story, what's the story? What's the story? But like, finally, she drilled into me, and she would come up with these really creative angles. And well, we can pitch this same space 5 different ways. Let's talk about the color story and how you developed the color. And it's not just, hey, look at this space. Isn't it beautiful? People want the meat and potatoes, I like to say. Like, they want the insides. They want to see, correct me if I'm wrong, but they want to see, like, here's this busy family of 4, like, their entry sucked. It didn't function before. There were shoes everywhere. They were tripping over each other. Mm-hmm. So we came up with this creative solution. And now when they come home, there's a place for everything. Like it's telling that story so that your potential client sees that and is like, oh my God, that's me. Like I trip over my kids' shoes every morning.
Exactly. And that's the story brand approach, right? Is having the person, the client is the hero of the story, not the design itself. And unfortunately, not the designer. You're the...
not us.
Sorry, you're the hero, but you're not the character. So I'm getting my story brand parlance mixed up. Oh my gosh. It's the main character.
It's about them.
Yeah. Anyway, it's about them as the takeaway.
Yeah.
But for sure, I mean, and then that's, when people, if you're thinking about, the magazine, their goals are to appeal to a readership. And so their readership are people looking for those solutions, right? So telling a story that helps them identify with the people in the story drives their business, which is to sell copies of the magazine. And so, yes, it also positions the designer as the hero who saves the day. And so that's,
right.
That's all part of it too. But you're absolutely right. Like the story is the most important part. Like what is compelling is the solutions that were arrived upon that make it,
it's like if you think of a great film, like a movie, the story is the through line. It doesn't matter how good the cinematography is, how good the acting is. If the story is basic and flat, it's just not going to be as successful, as widely acclaimed. People aren't going to enjoy watching it. You need to have the insides. You need to have the story. So knowing that, Margot, I'm so curious because there's so many ways now for designers to get published, to get out into the world. There's like social media, and I just recorded a podcast about online presence and the value in that. But there's so many ways, and I think for designers, it can be a little bit daunting and a little bit overwhelming. And I know for a fact from talking to designers in my community, oftentimes they're like, I don't even know where to start. Like, should I focus on my Instagram? Should I hire a publicist? Should I pitch this story to a magazine? Like, where should I invest my marketing dollars? Should it be on Pinterest? Like a girlfriend of mine just came the other day to me and she was like, I don't know, like, should I invest this money? I have this much money to invest. Do I invest it in Pinterest? Like somebody who can help get me set up? Do I do a LinkedIn strategy? Do I? And I'm like, I don't know. Margot's going to tell us.
Right. I mean, the avenue you go down depends so much on your goals, right? And I didn't mention off the top, but you have been alluding to it as that, yes, I'm also a partner in AustinSmyth Communications. And Hilary Smyth, my partner in the business, is also an ex-print journalist. And so we definitely, when we work with clients, we definitely are goals focused. So because your actions, you need to meet the people that you're after where they are going to be, right? So you need some amount of information on, there has to be like a goals discovery process. Is it to get more credibility? Is it to get more clients? Is it to get a different kind of client? And so our discovery call process really does get to that, get to the meat and potatoes of that, as you were saying earlier, meat and potatoes. So that way we then craft a plan accordingly, right? And so, because, there are lots of things you can do, but what you want to do is set up, something that is tailored to get you to the finish line that you want to get to, right? And so yeah, I mean, I do think getting published is definitely still on a lot of designers' wish lists, and we've been having so much success lately, and it is such a thrill. Like recently, a client, Corey Halpern, is on the cover of the current Style at Home, and it's funny. Like you mentioned, how exciting it was to see your work on the cover, and I actually realized that seeing Corey's work on the cover, something that we worked with her on, is just as thrilling as seeing your own work on the cover. It's sort of kind of interesting because I've actually had all the experiences. Like before I worked at Style at Home, my husband and I, our first house was photographed for Style at Home and ended up on the cover. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like my bedside table and my wedding photo on the cover of a magazine. I came home and it was there in the mail. And I was like such a thrill. And then when I was working at the magazines, I experienced, things that I styled or that I worked on that would have made the cover. And that was thrilling in a different way. And so this experience was thrilling in a whole other way, which is great. And I mean, there's just no denying that it's incredibly gratifying to see beautiful, your beautiful work on a cover like her. I'm sure, as you shared, it's very exciting. And it certainly, there is a lasting quality to print still. And there is something about it, that just sort of, I recently had someone contact me about a place that I had designed that was in a 2015 issue of House and Home. And they,
Wow.
There's a lasting quality that I'm not sure exists on some of the other platforms. So that's something to consider. That said, oh my goodness, as you know, the world is our oyster. There are so many different ways to communicate, the beautiful work of a design. And I think that, again, comes back to the goals and then making a strategic plan to use all of the resources at your disposal to get that out there. And when you think about it, everyone owns, social media accounts and they can connect in so many different ways. So, I think when you have a specific goal, you have to make a plan to reach the goal.
Yes.
And that's good. Now, though, but I will say on the other hand, it's like, I also don't love the idea of being someone who sounds like, if that sounds so burdensome, like, I do think there's a certain fun factor, right? With things like Instagram that doesn't always have to be like, I don't know, this huge beast that you have to slay. Like sometimes it is just fun to have something pretty and you know what I mean? Like I don't like to be so, what's the word? Maybe pedantic or something about, the way it's supposed to be. I do think that these tools are there for how you want to use them. And the rules come into play if you have a specific goal, but if you are looking to experiment or grow your audience or just try out some new things or like expand your creativity, then go for it. Just do what you want. Like have fun,
Yeah. And I think they kind of all work together. And that's been my experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't just invest in one avenue and think that like your brand is going to explode and you're going to attract all the ideal clients and you're going to get all the credibility in the world. Like it takes time too, wouldn't you say? Like we've been published loads and it's only now, like several years later, that we're really, the pandemic's helping give everyone a push, but we're finally starting to like almost like reap I don't know what's the word, when you're like trying to like, you work so hard, you work. Now finally people know who we are and they're reaching out to us and they're reaching out through Instagram and they're saying, I saw your Instagram, I saw your feature. Oh, I have this magazine from last year, like just to your point.
Yeah.
And typically what I've experienced, and I can only speak from my own experience, is that they often come to us having seen us and at multiple touch points.
Of course.
So it's like my neighbor mentioned she followed you on Instagram. And then I saw your Instagram and I remembered I've seen that space somewhere before. I was like, right, that was in the Style at Home. I loved that. And I tore it out and it's up in my whatever vision board thing. And then somebody else I talked to says they actually like worked with your like it's always weird touch points.
100%.
Because people always say to me, like, or they ask me often, well, does getting published get you work? And to me, that's a cynical question. I feel like you're coming at me already with that, with an expected answer. And I often say, well, not directly. It's not like somebody sees my Style at Home and then picks up the phone and says, I saw you in Style at Home, I want to hire you. Now that can happen, but I don't think that is happening to every designer every time they're published.
No.
It's the multiple touch points and getting in front of people. And like you said, Margot, I love that you said that planning and setting goals, because I talk so much about that, is what do you want to get published for? Or what do you want to get out into the universe for? Like, are you trying to attract a certain type of client, like in your local region? Well, maybe you want to think about that person, know your ideal client, right?
Yeah.
They buy magazines or are they on LinkedIn all day? Like, what are they doing?
Yes. Exactly right. And that's what I was saying is you have to meet, if that is your goal, then you want to meet them where they are. Like maybe you're thinking outside the box and donating a 2-hour consultation to a local private school's fundraising campaign because you'd like to, have a foothold in that community of parents, right? And who live in the types of homes that you want to work in. Like, there are definitely multiple, ways to kind of work that. And then local publications, as I think you were mentioning as well, is like, not just like the big nationals, but local, even newspaper articles or that sort of thing. But you're absolutely right. The multiple touch points thing is just a reality of marketing for every business right now. I mean, there's the sort of known marketing rule that people needed kind of 7 interactions with your brand before they were going to make a purchase. But now I've done some reading saying that's now up to sort of 20, 21, maybe I even heard one that was like 40 times.
My God.
Because like now we're just so bombarded with information every day, right? And that number has changed. But yeah, I always do try, we definitely try to explain to people that, like for instance, designing and creating a new beautiful portfolio website is going to require some really solid branding work to make sure that the text is going to work its hardest for you. So that's going to require that sort of brand discovery process and getting the words correct and the writing aspect of it. And then also, is your logo and are your graphics, where they need to be, and also the photography and the styling. So that's like a website is just one example of a venue that's your most important venue, really. And it is a vehicle of self-publishing. And it has all of those elements. It requires, good marketing copy, beautiful images, beautiful styling, great branding.
Yeah. And I would say your website is essential. Like as a designer, I still think it's essential. Unless you're like the old school designers who still don't have a website, you probably don't need one. But you know what I mean? But I almost feel like we could draw a map and it'd be like all these points and you'd start to see that everybody's journey to find you is different. Like
For
it's
sure.
style at home to Instagram to website or like Instagram to style at home to website. But I do think most people land at your website because that's how they find out the best way to contact you. So it's a really important opportunity.
Yeah. And even, I mean, even on a referral basis, if a friend tells you this designer is great, well, what are you going to do? You're going to do 2 things. You're going to go on their website and you're going to go on their Instagram feed, depending on who you are. Like maybe you won't go on their Instagram feed if you're not involved in Instagram, but like they're not going to just take their friend's word for it and then phone you. Like they're going to go on your website. And I've literally had someone say to me, oh, this person was recommended to me, but I went on their website and I went on that person's website and I was like, oh, yikes. Like, I know they do awesome work, but it's not there yet. Right. Like, and I know that's such a hard thing because it's like the photo shoots and, this year has been very challenging as far as that goes. But
oh my God,
like your website is the most important thing you have. And every person who gets referred to you is going to go there. And then your Instagram is website junior, right? It's just going to be also super important. So yeah, absolutely important. And then as you were saying, it's kind of funny though, because I do find like in the work that Hillary and I do, there is this tendency to kind of look at designers who have a super high profile and hold up their websites as being exemplary.
Mm-hmm.
From the standpoint of actually effective marketing, many of them are not at all. They just have beautiful interiors that are beautifully photographed. But that's a person who maybe has 35 years of experience and a portfolio as long as your arm. And, to a certain extent, that machine is driving itself, right?
It's not because of the website.
Not because of the website.
I love that you're saying that because there's a designer, one of many that we kind of look up to. And my team and I, they had a new website in the last few years. And we were like, oh, can't wait to check out their website. And I was like, oh, well, it looks really good. And I was like, I don't know. I feel like maybe this isn't really, I don't think it's a great website.
Yeah. And it is quite a realization. Yeah.
like, but the person's work and caliber is so high. And to me, it was a mismatch. Like, it was fine. Don't get me wrong. It was fine. But I'm looking at it with my marketing husband. And he's like, this is, like, this website sucks. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I see now what you're saying, all the things. But somebody might look to that designer and say, well, let's just copy their format.
Right.
Because it's clearly working for them. But actually, they may not be getting any work through that. They have this long, extensive network, like you say, of 30 plus years working in the industry.
Yeah.
The website is just kind of an afterthought. So it's so important to understand your goals and what you need and not to just copy what other people are doing.
And I would say, like most of those people have understood by now the need for beautiful photography. That's all good. And so that ends up dazzling. But then when you start reading the text, it's like, what in the what does this even mean? Like, it's just gobbledygook, like flowery speak. And that is just not going to be good.
Hey, Margot, you are preaching to the converted, because right now my website drives me mental. Like, it's fine. It looks pretty, whatever. But I know that the copy is not what I want. I'm pretty sure I plagiarized 15 websites 10 years ago and was like, this sounds really professional. Like, we are a full service design, la, la, la. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I've crafted so much more copy internally about our mission towards sustainability and how we help our clients. But none of it's reflected on the website because we just haven't gone and updated it. So right now, I'm like, you're talking my language, because right now, my rock for the next quarter is to do an entirely new website, reevaluate my brand, like you said, and look at it really holistically, because it's something I don't want to have to do every couple of years. Obviously you have to update it, but it's time to make sure, because we're getting lots of eyes on the site. We can talk about this in a second, but there's all kinds of ways to get, I don't know if you call it published, but to get out there online. Like, there's blogs, there's Pinterest, there's all that jazz. So if we are going to engage in doing that, if I'm going to do blog posts, then I better have a decent website that people are going to land on. Yeah. It really speaks to my message, which is not the website that I have. And it depends who you talk to, because I'll talk to some people and they're like, but Rebecca, there's nothing wrong with your website. It's so beautiful. I'm like, you don't get it. You don't get it. I'm like, yes, it's beautiful and it's nice, but it's not sending the message I want it to send, which that person probably doesn't know, right?
Sure. And I mean, I think it's a living document. It's a living, breathing piece of your business that continually, not freak you out because you're like, I just want to update it every couple of years. I'm like, no. Every couple months, get in there, get doing some stuff. And then same for Hillary and I with our AustinSmyth website. We've noodled around with a few things. We have some larger initiatives planned. Like, for instance, we don't yet have a section where we show all of the published work from our clients and that sort of thing. So, that's as a marketing and PR company, that's an essential element. And so, that's also on our to-do list. So just to say that, it's a living document, and constantly, jumping in and kind of taking a look and making sure it's still relevant. And as you take directions, like I know you've been working on a lot of sustainability efforts lately, it's really important to communicate that as being a core part of your business. So definitely. And that's going to happen naturally with every business. You may decide to want to specialize in, vacation home design or that sort of thing, in which case, rejig the portfolio to put those projects, give them more play and all that kind of stuff. I just think the more a website kind of lives and breathes and evolves, that the more compelling an experience it's going to be. And then your SEO is a bit better too. But
and also us as designers, business owners, we're changing and evolving. So the type of design I want to do now is not the same as the design I did 5 years ago. We do update our site, just to be clear. We do update it, but we've kind of let it slide, knowing that we want to do a big overhaul.
Sure.
So we're like, we're not going to update this.
Too, right? The bigger those get, the more you do have to devote, get the time blocking going. And
it's like a renovation. Well, I'm not going to bother updating the kitchen because I know I want to do the whole main floor. And then you just sit there with the same ugly kitchen for years.
So many parallels. Yes, many parallels.
Exactly. But yeah, it's so interesting, like hearing you say that, because when you talk about the photographs, and if you are pivoting, I know one of my students recently decided to pivot his entire business away from interior design towards staging.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, well, now you need to tweak your copy on your website. You need to showcase photography differently. And for us, I went to Vera, who manages all the marketing for me. I'm like, you got to get those projects off my website. Like, I don't want people to come to me for that older work, because A, it's not the caliber, and it's just not my taste anymore. Right.
Yeah.
And so I started evolving.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. So actually, I'm curious your thoughts on that. Like, so there's traditional publishing, which is like print, getting your work published, which I think every designer still strives for. I think we are one of the few industries who really, like, we do revel in print. I think just because there's something about seeing your space, like you said, like your bedroom on the glossy pages of a
yeah.
And then you can frame it. I think I have my first one framed.
Oh dear, that's so good.
Yeah, frame.
So good.
But now I'm curious, because now I'm seeing more and more people getting featured on blogs like Apartment Therapy or New York Times Online. Like, where is there value in that? What are your thoughts on that type of publicity?
I would say one of the most valuable types of publicity that you can go after right now, if, other than print, we're acknowledging print, is video. Like, if you can get video of, walk through space, video is king, as they say, in all worlds of content right now. And I think you're well along that line, because I know that you do a lot of video capture on the things that you're doing. So definitely, if you can get any kind of video content, would be great. The House and Home video team does an incredible job of on their channel, and their YouTube viewership numbers are amazing. So, but that said, YouTube is YouTube, so it's accessible to anyone who wants to sort of get it set up and go for it. And so you do some research into. I think probably YouTube now is at the point where it does require a level of polish. Like, I think it does require professional equipment and people with skills to kind of make it, it's not quite as brash as it used to be. So I do think if someone wanted to kind of create that, the great thing about that is then you've got content that you can embed in your website. So it goes back to your website discussion about having external links to content, which is great for your website as well. But then as far as like other venues go, like blogs and all that kind of stuff, I mean, as you said, multiple touch points is the goal. So, and there is a certain amount of truth to the no publicity is bad publicity. So even if someone's doing a story on home offices and you happen to have like, even if it's an occasion where it's a single photo that gets used, like there's a website in the States called Hunker Home, and sometimes they do those kind of amalgamation stories. So reaching out to someone like that and putting them in touch with you and having them see your website may be a way to sort of get them, interested in a single image on a, bedroom design story or something like that. It also gives you something to shout about, right? It gives you something to talk about on your video channels. It works to your credibility. It works to that multiple touch points goal. And it opens you up to new audiences, right? Like, the people who are following you on Instagram are certainly quite different could be a huge different segment of society than people reading Apartment Therapy or, and then LinkedIn, as you mentioned, like, a large segment. It's weird. Like, I think a lot of us who are sort of in more creative venues, we don't realize how integral LinkedIn is to so many other business segments. And those people are people with money to spend, and they want to spend it sometimes on their homes, and even more so right now. Mm-hmm. So meeting them there, and also connecting on like apps like TikTok or Clubhouse. I mean, gosh, there's all kinds of
a little bit.
It can be endless.
I'm like, yep. I opened LinkedIn last night for the first time in 6 months, only because my husband's friend was like, "Why doesn't Rebecca accepted my LinkedIn request?"
Oh my gosh,
like, dude! I just don't even open the app. It's like I can't. Like I feel like I've had to kind of at one point I was like doing all the things. I had the YouTube channel, let's do this. And it was too much.
It's too much.
Do all of it well.
Yeah.
And so I just decided I needed to pare it back. It doesn't mean you can't expand. I hope to go back to the YouTube this year, but it can only spread myself so thin unless you have someone to do the things for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely recognize that too. But sometimes you need to dabble in them a little bit to learn where your best fit is and where your best payoff is, for sure. I mean, yeah, I also got an email today saying 64 new updates you haven't read. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I haven't been on in a little while. But I hear that there's like they have video now on LinkedIn, and they have stories or something like that as well. So platforms evolve, and so sometimes being on top of those kind of developments can change what that is for you. Like maybe now it's interesting, whereas it wasn't for the previous 10 years or something. Mm-hmm. But certainly, definitely trying to get any kind of multiple touch points of kind of exposure is great, and it does help you have something to sort of broadcast on your own channels as well. So
and one thing I want to circle back to that you said part of it, I don't know, you didn't say it in these words, but like the idea of bragging rights, that sounds so bad, but when you get published,
100%.
One of the things that I would remind people to do when you do get featured in something, or you've done a video of your own, or whatever it might be, you need to share it with your audience multiple times. So that's a mistake I think we make internally, is we think like, well, people don't want to see that again. I already shared it once. I shared it in a story and it's on Instagram. But what I realize is not everybody is seeing everything that you put out into the world. And so especially if you get featured on the cover of a magazine, but it could be something as like, I created this YouTube video, I did last year, I did the 10 days to a healthy home video series. I mean, it was very basic quality, but it was very informative. And I had this thought, I'm like, probably tens or hundreds of people have no idea I even did that series. It still has value. Why not bring it back? Or why not share again? And one of my closest designer friends saw something in a story. She's like, oh, I never even saw you post about that. You got featured in that thing. And I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. I don't want to like overload everyone. And in the end, you put so much effort, or you work with someone like AustinSmyth, or you put the time in yourself to get featured, and then you don't take the time to get the word out about the feature. So I think it's something, I don't know, I'm curious what you think about that, but I do think that I sometimes don't share as much as I see other people doing, because I don't want it to be too like braggy or like, look at this. But at the same time, it's like, yes, I'm trying to attract clients.
Yeah. Hello. I do. I definitely have some thoughts on that. And at AustinSmyth, we definitely advise people a couple of really important points. First one, don't reveal the entire story. If you're published, don't put every page of the story on your Instagram feed, because you're cannibalizing the magazine. If you give away the content, nobody's going to buy it. And if they don't buy it, you don't have a venue to pitch your work to. So that is a major challenge for publishing outlets right now, is trying to have some degree of exclusivity in order that their product, a published magazine, is a desirable product for someone to spend money on, as opposed to them people picking up their phones and just scrolling mindlessly, right?
Like you could do a sneak peek, or here's
absolutely. So if you're on the cover, obviously show the cover. Then I would say the other thing to do is the opening spread, right? In a beautiful in situ shot. And I wouldn't show the individual images until the issue is off the newsstands, because like they need a chance to sell their product. And if you value being in that product, which you clearly do because you're excited about it, then be a team player and build that product and build the excitement and tell your audience to go buy the issue, and be excited about being in the company of your peers who are also in that issue, and build them up. And build a community, because the more you build the community, the more that those venues are around to build you back. So that's one of the most important pieces of advice we always share. But you're right, like multiple ways of doing it. And there are lots of clever ways, as you say, with sneak peeks and, a picture of you in the room holding the magazine, where you're in the room, like that is gold as well, that sort of thing, where it's like, there's like a real personal connection with it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
those are some of them.
Good. That's really great advice, because I mean, I've probably been guilty of it. It's been a while since I've done something like that, but
Yeah.
I only see other designers do that, where it's like, swipe through this post and you can see every page I'm featured in. So it's like, you're right. I could just zoom in, check out the pictures. I don't need to buy the magazine.
And I've also seen designers post like every image from the magazine over the course of the first week it's out.
Right.
Why am I going to buy that magazine?
And also, like, why did you wait this long for the feature to come out and then just plop it all out onto social?
Yeah.
Like, you waited all this time and get people to get the magazine, take pictures with it, share on their social, that type of thing. Oh, that's really great. That's really interesting.
Literally, like these venues are not going to be around if the content is not like in any way like special and desirable, right? And so we do get people like clients are like, but so-and-so has posted all their images. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. We don't advise it. Because we come from that background, and we know that the importance of that magazine is that there is, any of the magazines is there is some degree of, you want to be able to walk up to a newsstand and pick up the copy and flip through it and be like, oh my gosh, so beautiful. I've never seen any of this before. I'm going to go and spend money on this, right? That is a tough thing to get someone to make a decision to do, right? And so, you're going to make them decide to do that by the content being fresh and exciting and beautifully photographed and beautifully laid out, and that they haven't seen before. Because, like, I'm not going to go buy a magazine that has like all stories on it that I've seen around Pinterest for the last year and a half, 2 years. Like,
yeah,
I'm not going to.
And that's why most magazines that I know of, anyhow, at least the more national publications, they don't take spaces that have previously been featured or that are posted all over your website and all over your Instagram, right? They aren't usually interested in those because they want theirs to be unique and special. Now, it might be something that's been on your website, and that's fine, but it's not typical.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a tough one. That is a tough nut to crack, because it is a moving target. Like, there is not a hard and fast rule, because to some extent, even though websites are public, they are your proprietary space, right? So it's not considered as, by most publications, as being you publishing the content, because it's not like it's been announced to a huge wide swath of
I had a space where the magazine was like, I was like, oh, but I already have it on my website, because it was like I'd had the space done for several months. Right. And they said, that's fine, you can keep it on your website, but we just ask that you don't post any images of this space on your social media until the magazine comes out. And I was like,
I would say that's pretty standard. Some venues will request that any images that they're going to feature come off your website. Some won't. It depends. And that there's not a single way. We always, at AustinSmyth, we always make sure that we know what the outlet's requirements are, and we advise clients accordingly. And then in the US, it's totally different. They have very different rules, and it goes publication by publication. And I would say it errs more towards more exclusivity. That said, maybe like they need to pull off a story on pools and like how amazing pools are. And it's like, okay, well, we'll take anything you got, because we want to do this great story on pools, and we don't care that it's been on your Instagram, because it's going to be part of this other story that's a bigger. So there are exceptions. There are always exceptions, but I would say just a level of kind of like, discretion and exclusivity is always kind of appreciated.
Yeah, I think that's really great. It's interesting. Made me realize the other day, a realtor that I follow on Instagram was like, oh, I wrote this great article and it was a publication, and it was about the real estate market and what have you. And she may have linked to the article. I don't even know, because she did like a screenshot of the whole, I could swipe through her post and read it which is exactly what I did.
Right.
And then I left her feed. There was no incentive for me to go to her link in bio, click and read the full article because I felt like I got the gist and then I moved on.
Yeah.
So I'm like having an aha moment right now, Mark. I'm like, oh my God, I get it.
Yeah.
Don't share all the goods. So good.
And I mean, I think you can share goods like after they're not selling that magazine anymore, right? Because, you know, in case you missed it, we were in the blah, blah, blah. You can buy back issues here. Like there's always, there's always a way to.
Well, that's cool.
I don't know.
Oh. Okay. So there's so many things I still want to talk about. We won't have time to cover.
Move on.
If a designer, say, had $5,000 to invest in marketing, PR stuff, where would you say would be the best first place to start?
Well, the most important thing they need is solid brand identity and great photography of their work. So, do they have those things already? Then we can move on and they could put that money elsewhere. If they don't have those things, then those would be important things to invest in. How's the website? You know what I mean? Like all the stuff we were already talking about. Because it's crowded marketplace. There's a lot of people doing design and you need to carve out what your unique offering is. And I think that's really important to anything you're going to do. Any marketing effort has to be backed by a solid identity of what your value offering is and how you differentiate yourself in the marketplace. And if you don't have that in place, any efforts will not be as fruitful as they might be. So that's really important. And that's something that we work on with clients who usually it's in the process of doing a website. We work on Squarespace websites. So those are really important. Photography and styling, really important. We offer styling services along with managing photography. Some designers like to do their own styling. Some prefer not to. And that's, has a lot to do with just that whole concept of how you're running your business and when you want to outsource certain tasks. Like maybe you want to outsource bookkeeping. Maybe you want to outsource writing tasks. Maybe you want to be outsourcing styling because you'd rather be, at the stone yards and working on the next project because you're done with that project. Or maybe you do have a goal to be published and you'd like people like Hillary and I who have experience with, the types of styling that appeal to editors to get in there and get that done and work with the best photographers. So sorry, the answer is it depends. But
that's always the answer.
It's always the answer.
Now, you did answer it. Like, I think that's really valuable for designers to hear. Like it makes sense, right? Like why put everything out there? Why attract all these eyeballs onto your brand if you don't clearly even know what your brand is and it's not visually appealing? Because people, like you said, like that friend who was referred by the person to the designer goes to her website. And even though the referral was strong, the website didn't support that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then there's a weird question mark, right? Like,
And it's a reflection.
Like I know my friend had a good experience, but I'm not loving what I'm seeing. So what's the middle ground? Is she just so amazing and so busy that she doesn't have time to do this other stuff? But then it's like,
why can't she carve out the time? Yeah, I totally. Yeah, I think it's like anything. It's like get your house in order in a way. Like at least the bare minimum, like some professional photography. So maybe you need to hire someone to help you with the professional photography because let's be honest, it's a lot of work too. Like I do not enjoy, when I first started, it was really fun because it was a novelty, right? And I would spend so much time styling and I would shop the city and I'd get all the things. And then over the years, if I look at my photography where it was me styling, the quality, in my opinion, of the photographs was nothing to do with the photographer, kind of went down a little bit because I was like, oh, why did I put that mug there with that? Like I just started to lose interest. Very time consuming. It is not my specialty. And I think it's okay for designers who are listening to hear that and say, and like, it's okay if you are not passionate about those finishing touches. It's there are people like Margot or whoever in your city that can help you, who can help coordinate the photographer, find a great photographer that fits with your style. I would imagine you help with that. And then literally shop the city, style the space, and then pack everything up and take it away for you.
That's right.
Hello.
And sell some of it to your client.
Yes.
And because your client's been like dragging their heels on doing finishing touches, and that's making you crazy, and you just want to get it done so that you can, close this account and move on. And then we bring a whole bunch of stuff, and then your client's like, oh my gosh, the photos look so beautiful. I'm gonna take that and that and that and that. And then bonus.
Amazing. Oh, that's good. I didn't know that. So like
right.
things that they can buy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing, is just, I guess before AustinSmyth, like in some of the different freelance stuff I've done, I did do some freelance work with designers on that accessorizing layer of, so that's like a little bit where there wasn't necessarily a photo shoot happening. It was just, supporting designers on making some selections that,
yeah, because you're so right. By the end, we're all like, a lot of us, I won't speak for everyone. We're like, we're over it. We're like,
everyone,
new shiny object over there. Can you please just like stop calling me and bugging me for like one more picture frame? Like I'm done.
Yeah. And everyone has a different level of, interest and then some people have people, like if they have staff members on staff, they're not a solopreneur, then they may have people on staff. They may have staffed their office with, someone who's really good with CAD and someone who's amazing with styling and someone who's, that's all good. But I did want to also take a minute to acknowledge the fact that not everyone, when they're in the earlier stages of their career, can afford to hire a professional photographer. It's super expensive. And I don't want to negate that it's worth it, because it totally is. But if you look at people like Studio McGee and Leclerc Decor, both of those companies rose to astronomical heights of success. Both of those companies started by shooting their own projects themselves. They taught, they bought equipment, they taught themselves how to do the best quality of photography they could as non-professionals. And it was enough to, send them out into the stratosphere, right? Like when I was at House and Home, I remember calling Shay McGee and like, it's just their cell phone. And he's like, oh yeah. Like, and what's the other?
Sid.
Yeah, Sid. So Sid would answer and he's like, oh yeah, no, Shay shot that one and it's her mom's kitchen. And okay, we'll email you the shots. And it's like, they were very grassroots and now they're like freaking in the stratosphere, right? Getting like bought out by VCs and stuff. So it's in your power to do it. It's just that it takes time. It takes more time, right? When you have to do, like if I have to change a faucet myself, it's going to take longer than calling a plumber. But I can do it.
It will take me forever. It will never do.
Right? I can find out how to do it and I can do it. Do I choose to do it? No. Will I need to do it sometime if maybe I don't have the funds? Sure. Then I'll just go and do it, right? Like I think, you can take amazing shots just with an iPhone and they're certainly good enough for Instagram. And some of them are even good enough for a website. If you really know what you're doing and you can really use that tool to its best potential, which most people don't. Most people grab a quick shot, but we know that Apple has done whole ad campaigns around shot with iPhone, right? Like it exists out there. The knowledge is out there. So if you really are feeling pinched, dig into some serious Googling and YouTubing and equip yourself with all the essentials. And, that's kind of taking great photos is one of the components of our social media coaching that we do for AustinSmyth, because it is really such an essential aspect of that.
What would you say? Yeah. What would you say about like number of shots that you need per space or per room? Because we see influencers who maybe aren't really even designers yet, and they have like hundreds of pictures of the same room from like a million different angles. Is that something that you would recommend for someone who's starting out and who doesn't really have a portfolio yet?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing about it is if you don't have a bunch of spaces to shoot, then you use your own home as a laboratory and you have to, reinvent it as many ways and then learn how to do the best flat lays of samples. Like those are all some great ways. You can do like crazy stuff, like guerrilla stuff, like go and buy a whole bunch of stuff and like shoot a corner of your room and then return it all. Like, like you can, there's, when
I've done that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can fabricate art and like go buy a chair and then like make a corner and make a beautiful vignette shot. There's all kinds of ways that you get yourself content. But I mean, I don't know. Is it compelling to see the same space over and over again? No. It is compelling if there are changes that are notable and if that is a way to show your skill and your offering, right? Like that's what I say. And I mean, kind of on that note, but one thing we've noticed is there's definitely a difference between designer run photo shoots and photo shoots that are specifically for the purpose of, sort of more of an editorial angle. Because we do find that sometimes there's this desire to try and capture like every nook and cranny of a space, which is just not necessarily.
You put so much blood, sweat, and tears into every detail. I totally am guilty of that.
Yeah. And I get it. But if you're going to do that, then you have to invest in 2 or 2.5 days of photography. Because here's the rule. Really don't count on getting more than 13 to 15 quality photos in a day of professional photography with styling the spaces as you go. If you're getting more than that, the last 5 are probably garbage because they're happening after the sun's gone down and there's no good natural light. And so don't bother. You're spending money on photos that are no good. So just don't do it. Like that's one of my hugest pet peeves is when people are like, oh yeah, we're going to get 30 shots in a day. I'm like, you're going to get 13 good shots and the rest is going to be garbage and you're going to have a terrible day. So like really it's so worth it to get good shots because if you think about all the work, like it's a year, more than a year sometimes you put into a space. Why are you running around like a mad person trying to get all the shots and like photographers losing their minds trying to like light a powder room and shoot it like 5 ways from Sunday? No, like just you are not doing yourself any favors and you are not helping with your work look its best. Like really, that's what it comes down to is trying to make sure, take the time to get it right and do it right. And really don't task a day with more than 13 to 15 shots. If you want more, book more time.
Would you say plan out those shots as best you can in advance?
100%.
Yeah.
Plan in advance. You want to know the exposures. Like, is it south facing, east facing, west facing? Share that information with the photographer. When Hillary and I work on website or photo shoots for our clients, we're really taking care of a lot of that planning process in consultation with the designer. And again, I'll say this word again, it comes back to the goals. What are the goals? So for instance, if you, this particular interior has a sensational kitchen with amazing features, you'll want no fewer than 5 shots of that kitchen. And you probably want a mix of like pull back and close up and details and some of the other, any custom elements. That's going to compromise your day because that's more than a half a day shooting. So then if you've got 3,000 more square feet of rooms to shoot, you know what I mean? Like it is about goals. And some of that's driven by what you need for your website. Some of that's driven by what you want your clients to be in the future. Like if you love working on kitchen design and you don't have that many great kitchens on your website, then you got to shoot the heck out of that great kitchen. And don't just do 1 or 2 shots and then shoot the rest of the house, right? Because
totally. I've been that designer where I'm like just pushing and it's stressful because I'm like looking at the clock, trying to keep things rolling, barely pause to eat, like go, go, go. It's exhausting even on a normal day. And then reality is you get the shots back and you're right. Not half of them, but a handful of them are just like, okay. Right. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, and it's like a reflection on the photographer to you, but it's not the photographer. It's your like desire to capture every single time moment. And then now what I'm seeing, it's like sometimes I have to learn from experience. Apparently that's the only way I learn is you look at the pictures and you're like, oh, I really only ever end up using the 3 shots. I have all the shots and I never use them anywhere.
and you think about like your website and that's the other thing that's a driver. So first of all, if you're pitching to a publication, you don't need any more than 13 to 15 shots. They're not going to run more than that. Mm-hmm. On your website, if you have your website organized by project, like how long you want that scrolling experience to be. Like, sorry, like people don't have that attention span.
Overall sense.
What it does give you, and I will give you this, is if you have multiple shots of a project, you don't need to put them all up at the same time. It gives you the opportunity to like switch them up. Like, as I was saying before about making your portfolio living and breathing in your website, is like, oh, maybe now I want to go into that project and like, put the bathroom first and switch up which photos are in it. So it does give you that flexibility, and certainly gives you, content you can live on, that you can use for social media. But again, as you said, you'll tend to favor certain ones that are your favorites anyway, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. We've totally gone over time. So
of course.
Good things to talk about.
Surprise, guys.
I love talking about marketing. I feel like I miss my calling in some ways. I feel like I should just gone into marketing. I do love design, but I'm so I get so fired up and excited about learning about strategy and marketing and all that stuff. So I'm like a sponge. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just all part of, there's so much creativity in marketing too, right? It is about telling the story of a brand, of a company, and whether that company is making shoes or making rooms or making, notebooks or, you know what I mean? Making staplers. I'm like looking at things on my desk. They still have to tell what makes them amazing at that and why the client needs that in their life, right? So.
Oh my God, I need to hire you to do my website. I'm like thinking about all the things. I'm like, this is a big undertaking.
That's so cool. Yeah, and we love working with Squarespace. I've been working with Squarespace sites since 2008, since before people had websites. I don't know. And Squarespace is an amazing platform because it's such a nice, beautiful, clean interface. It's easy to use on the back end for those who might be interested in doing that down the line.
It is. We have one, and I'm even able to go in and change things.
Yeah. And the other thing that I'm not sponsored by them, although I have done many, many websites, so I'm part of their inner circle. But the other thing that is killer for them is the service. The tech support is amazing. They're very responsive, and they're just, so I think that's really important for people who would like to be self-directed a little bit, who aren't always necessarily handing everything off to someone else. But our clients are a mix. Some of our clients, we just give them a tutorial and they take it and they're going to do it on their own. But some of our clients will do a maintenance, process where we just do updates as they're ready, and we, price those out. And
well, we can talk offline about
yeah. So lots of stuff.
Okay, so before we say goodbye, is there any last nugget of wisdom that you'd like to share with my listeners?
Nugget of wisdom. Well, I just think people need to believe in themselves, and maybe not so much looking at peers and what peers are doing, but really look within themselves and within their, think about your best client designer relationship and how that went and how you would like to replicate that in order to attract more people like that client, rather than looking to, I do think peer support is really important, but I just think looking within yourself and your relationship with your best clients and what did you do right, and then just keep doing that and keep plugging along. And also never stop learning and never stop being inspired by trying something new, doing something new. That's going to rejuvenate yourself, your business, your creativity, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I'm all for that. That's amazing. Okay. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Great. So with AustinSmyth, we are on Instagram at AustinSmyth Communications, and that's SMYTH. So Austin is AUSTIN, and then it's SMYTH Communications. I'm also on Instagram myself at Margot Austin, and that's Margot with T. we're at AustinSmyth.com, and I'm at MargotAustin.ca. So we do, I'm both places, all those places. And I'm at Clubhouse, Margot Austin.
Oh, yeah.
TikTok.
I've seen you at Clubhouse. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm addicted to Clubhouse and I'm addicted to TikTok, but I have not mastered making content there, but I'm a massive consumer of TikToks.
I think my husband is the same. He's like, anytime I look at him, he's on TikTok. He never has created a video. He just consumes. I
don't watch TV. I watch TikTok. So I'm there. Margot Dwaron Austin has my maiden name. So anyway.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Margot.
So much fun. I love your podcast. I listen to it all the time. And I love your mix of people. And I'm so happy to have been considered in the mix. So that's great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And we will definitely have you back because you have so much wisdom to share. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Rebecca.
Well, that was really great. I mean, doesn't she just know so much? I hope that was informative, especially if you are somebody who's looking to get your name out there, or maybe you have had some experience with PR and you're just wanting to learn a little bit more. Margot certainly is a real depth of knowledge. I mean, I think I can only imagine if she was styling all my photo shoots, how much better my photography would be. There is so much value, honestly, guys, in hiring professionals to do professional work. I mean, shoot. Isn't that what we do? Like, think about it for a second there. And I know it's expensive. It's expensive to hire a professional photographer. And Margot gave some really great tips on ways that you can sort of hack it and do it yourself. But I will say, if you're an interior designer, you are banking on someone hiring you for your expertise and you are a professional, right? Maybe they can do it themselves. Probably they don't want to. And so they're hiring you. Same goes for you hiring a photographer, someone to help with PR and communications. It's like, that's their wheelhouse. Let them take that off your plate. I think those are really great nuggets of wisdom. One story that I forgot to share with Margot that I intended to, but we just had so much to talk about, was that, like, I've always admired Margot from afar. Like, you know, when you see her picture on those glossy pages of the magazine being like, she's the editor of this magazine, you're like, oh my gosh, she is like way high up there. I'll probably never meet her. And then being at a party and like seeing her from across the room, she probably had no idea who I was. And I was like, oh my God, that's Margot Austin. Holy heck, I've arrived. I'm at the same party as Margot Austin. Anyhow, hopefully, Margot, if you're listening, you'll appreciate that story. I will rack my brain and try to figure out which industry event that was. This was clearly a long time ago, pre-pandemic. Anyhow, guys, if you enjoyed that, drop us a note on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to join our designer meetup group. Maybe I can get Margot to come and do a Facebook Live in there. That'd be kind of fun. Maybe some other great nuggets of wisdom to learn from her again. And have a great day.